Will Vladimir Putin be able to blame the Crocus attacks on Ukraine and NATO, or at least link the two, right? And the answer, I think, is yes, and but maybe not as much for reasons that people might think. And so, just first of all, yeah, this was ISIS, right? This is the Islamic State, Daesh, whatever you want to call it. Is the U.S. said, warned ahead of time, something like this was going to happen. Something like this happened, and then ISIS said, yes, we did it, and the U.S. is like, yeah, they did it. I'm done. I'm not going to argue it, right? So the thing is, though, will Putin and the Russian society, that because that's the key thing. Remember, it's not just Putin selling it; it's people accepting it. Audience response is the technical term. So will that play out? And yeah, you can point to his control of the media. That certainly helps him. You can talk about the kind of insane propaganda, the just blatant lies that have typically been told. And in some ways, that might work against him, right? But I think it comes down, the thing that's going to be the key factor here is that the society is ready for a story, right? The societal response to a mass terror attack like this is to, kind of question, all right, what are the threats in this world? Why did this happen? Who are these people that did this? Why did they do it? Why did they do it to us? And the psychological impact of a terror attack like this is devastating, is really bad for the society. But we've studied it, right? And in the United States, a lot of us went through it. And that sense of, we all know the world is dangerous, right? We know none of us are getting out alive. But when something like this happens, it makes us question our understanding of the existing threats, right? We think we know how to navigate the waters of life. And, we know where the rocks and shoals are, to make a metaphor here, because we have a map, right? That map in our head is technically, it's called ontological security. Sorry for that. But we have a map. Let's go with the map. A terror attack is something that wasn't, I don't understand what this is, right? Especially a novel one, a shocking one, right? And so we weren't going to see that, right? And not to lighten it up, but think of it, you didn't have it on your bingo card, right? Your bingo card is your ontological understanding. That's in that expression. So the thing is, though, now people need to understand, and they're going to look for a story that explains it to them. And at that moment, a national leader has an incredible power, right, or opportunity to tell a story that explains that. And they can definitely manipulate that story to their advantage. But even if he wasn't, and I think he's going to try to manipulate it, because that's what he's been doing. The thing is, though, that even if that wasn't his primary goal, one of the things about these kind of security stories, it's kind of the Captain Obvious comment, but it's easier to sell people on something being a threat when it's already threatening. So the existing threats, the usual suspects in the world, are the easiest things to go for, right? So after 9/11, we all looked at Saddam Hussein. You must have had something to do with it. And a lot of people were convinced he did it, right? Or he had some link. And it was, even though there was very little evidence, and in fact, if you, scratch the surface, Al-Qaeda was trying to get rid of that guy. He was the near enemy, but the usual suspect, right? So for Putin, he's got a society where he has been doing a lot of work selling Ukraine as a threat, selling NATO as a threat, telling a story that there are these threats out there. Now we get kind of an unrelated thing. He's going to fold that in. And in fact, it can bolster his narrative, right? In the United States, we found Iraq more threatening once we had a feeling of threat from 9/11. We, were less willing to tolerate threats, or the even the small chance of a threat from Saddam Hussein. And so that bolstered it. If that worked in the United States, How does that not work in Russia, where Putin has control over the media and stuff? And so I think that this atmosphere is actually going to give Putin a great opportunity to say, see, I told you there are forces in the world that are trying to get them. Maybe Ukraine wasn't the one, maybe Ukraine didn't actually do this, but you see how how these global threats can impact us. ISIS is one, Ukraine is one, definitely NATO is another. And so I think Putin is going to be able to manipulate this to his advantage. And you're going to see people believing things that from the outside, we're going to find, how do they think that? But it's about the mass psychology, the need for an explanation, and building the explanation on current explanations that are in play. And so that's where I see this situation. That's where I see it starting, and that's where I see it going.